My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Jesus, we could add to our habitual list of intercessors at the end of our introductory prayer today, St. Thomas. It's always a great joy to celebrate the feasts of your apostles, special feasts for the church on earth and in heaven, no doubt. These your dear friends, the special 12 disciples whom you chose to be with you and who you sent out to proclaim the gospel, who were special witnesses of your resurrection and recipients of the grace of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, and who were given the special role as foundation pillars of the church, the apostolic college. Jesus, one of the motives for the credibility of the historicity of the Gospels, one of the reasons why we know that they also have, that they have historical value, is how the apostles are described in the Gospels, not always in the most flattering of terms. You would expect that if people were making up a story, that the leaders and the foundations of the church that they were trying to establish would be rock solid and would be near perfect. But that's not what we find in the Gospels. We find imperfect men who make mistakes and who get ahead of themselves and don't always understand. And we love that. And Jesus, it's some of our favorite scenes in the Gospels are where we see the humanness of the apostles. Not because we want to make them any less than, or make their role or the gift, their charism any less than it is, their role in the church and their sanctity even, but because it makes them relatable. We can see our own difficulties, our own struggles in theirs, and then we can see you acting in them and therefore in us. It gives us great hope. And so that's why we love seeing impetuous St. Peter and overzealous St. James and St. John. And it's also why we love seeing doubting Thomas. Now, that may be an unfair title that he's wound up with, because doubt can be understood in different ways. But it's because of what you said to him, Jesus. After the resurrection, when St. Thomas wasn't with the 12, and they told him that they had seen you. And his response, he brought forth honestly and openly his difficulty. Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger into the place where the nails pierced and insert my hands into his side, I will not believe. St. Thomas wanted to be sure to believe that Jesus was bodily resurrected. He wanted to encounter his body. And Jesus, the beautiful thing is that 8 days later, when you appear, you go right to that difficulty. You go right to that obstacle. You go right to that questioning heart of St. Thomas, and you call him to you. You call him to do that very thing, to put his finger in your side, to put his hand in your side and his finger in your wounds. And you say to him, Jesus, do not be unbelieving. Do not doubt any longer, but believe. And that's where, no doubt, this term has come from, doubting Thomas. Do not doubt any longer. Do not be disbelieving, but believe. And there, really, the gift of faith is given. St. Thomas doesn't say, I now believe that you are resurrected from the dead, although that was obvious. But he believed something that he couldn't see, as is pointed out to us by the saints. He can now see the physical resurrected Jesus, bodily resurrected, but his proclamation of faith is about Jesus' divinity, about your divinity. The same words that we used in the beginning in our introduction to this prayer, my Lord and my God. Jesus, you showed him your humanity, risen from the dead, and he believed in your divinity. Before I went to the seminary, I was a high school teacher. I taught religion in an all-boys Catholic high school to 16, 17, 18-year-old boys. It was a very good training ground, that's for sure. And I noticed pretty quickly that the guys would ask questions, and it was always a delight. I mean, it meant they were paying attention. But there were definitely different ways of asking questions. And I began to categorize these in two groups. There was questioning to question, and there was questioning to know. So sometimes, and typical, I suppose, of an adolescent boy trying to test the limits of those who are put in authority over him or are making claims before him, is to question in order to put you in difficulty. They would try and trip me up. They would try and look for holes in my arguments so that I would find myself in difficulty, or a lot of the time they would question so that they wouldn't have to believe. They would question to be questioning. I'm questioning to question authority, to question my faith, to be contrary, because then I don't have to base my life on this. Then I don't have to hand myself over to God. So I can hold up this wall of questioning. I can close this door. I can make this an obstacle to any real faith. And when those questions came up, and I would try to respond without fail, the questioner didn't listen to the response because he didn't want to know. He just wanted to question. And then there were others who struggled, who wrestled, who would ask questions because they could see a difficulty and they were seeking. And then, and even now as a priest, my favorite interactions are encountering people who are wrestling but truly seeking, who want to know and believe that the truth is there, but have struggles in perceiving or receiving or believing it. And so just like there are two kinds of questions, indeed there are two kinds of doubts. And this is what the Catechism of the Catholic Church speaks about. In the section on faith and sins against faith, it says that doubt, that is voluntary doubt, is a sin against faith. When I willfully refuse or reject that which has been revealed by Christ and is taught by his church, that is that closing the door, building up a wall. And Jesus you do not force your way into our lives. Faith is a gift, but you knock on the door to give us that gift. And if we put on padlocks, and if we build up walls, and if we lock that door, you won't insist, Jesus. But to the seeking heart, to the heart that wrestles, to the one that questions, the one who has obstacles, like St. Thomas, you come to meet him. You draw him to yourself. You call him by name. You respond to those obstacles so that we can receive the gift of faith, grow in our faith, go deeper into the mystery. Jesus, you're not afraid of our struggles, of our difficulties, of our intellectual obstacles, of things that maybe seem like contradictions to us. No, you invite us to wrestle with those, to untie them, to study, to speak to those who know, so that we can have those obstacles removed so we can receive the gift of faith. It's the classical definition of theology: faith seeking understanding. I believe, and so I know I can understand more. So I know you will help me get through this difficulty or this obstacle. And that's what the famous quote from St. John Henry Newman means. That he says 10,000 difficulties don't make up a doubt, right? 10,000 involuntary doubts, those struggles and difficulties don't make up a voluntary doubt or refusal of faith. They don't enter into sin. Any temptation against faith, any wrestling or struggling or having difficulties don't need to result in a voluntary refusal of what you have revealed, Jesus. So maybe we could say St. Thomas is better called St. Thomas of difficulties, difficulty Thomas, or seeking St. Thomas the seeker, St. Thomas the wrestler. And Jesus, just like you drew him to your body to reveal your divinity, so too the best place for us as we are seeking to grow in our faith, as we're wrestling with our own questions and perhaps intellectual obstacles or difficulties, is there in front of you in the Blessed Sacrament, near, close to your resurrected, glorious body, truly present in the Blessed Sacrament. There, Jesus, we can receive from you the lights of faith, or that you open the eyes of our heart, like St. Thomas, to be able to perceive you, so that we can say those words, those same words, his words, and those words that we say every time we see the host elevated. It's you, I believe, my Lord and my God. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.